Hello and welcome to the Wellness Connection podcast with Fiona Kane. I'm your host, Fiona Kane. And today it's exciting because I have a guest again. I haven't had a guest for a while. My guest today is Hazem Slater. Hi, Hazem.
Hey, how are you going, Fiona?
I'm well, thanks today. How are you going?
Not too bad, not too bad. The sun's
Well,
out, so we're all winning.
yeah, exactly. So, look, for those who don't know you, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm a triplegic. About 5 years ago, it happened. I've always suffered with spinal osteosarcoma, which, for those who don't know, is basically it's a tumor that eats away your bone. Usually in adolescence, I first got diagnosed at 14, and then been on and off in a wheelchair and whatnot since then. But permanently, it came back. I came out of remission about 5, 6 years ago, and it's taken its toll on me, and it's so much so that it's rendered me a triplegic now.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And you're also a businessman?
I am. I manage a coffee roasting business and supply beans to cafes and restaurants and retail. That all came about by accident, but yeah, I still in the workplace and still trying to keep active as much as I can, despite the hurdles that I have been given
Mm,
in this
yeah.
lifetime.
Yeah. So you and I had a chat the other day. I record another podcast, a business podcast, and I found your story really, really interesting. And I thought that it would be really interesting for my listeners because it really is a story where you've had to do a lot of adapting and adjust your mindset and make different changes in your life that can be really, really hard to make. So, would you mind just starting maybe by just telling a little bit more of your story?
Yeah, look, I started off as a normal, healthy kid. Had a normal life, a good family, hardworking migrant parents. Working 2, 3 jobs is the cliche story. Back in the 80s, I guess. Went to school, went to the best schools that they could afford. And basically, all I wanted to do all my life was to fly. So my head was always determined to become a pilot. I had my light aircraft license at the age of 13, so there was a flying Piper or a Cessna Piper Warrior. So that was an achievement in itself. Then from there, went on to the Air Force Cadets, and I think within 14 months, I got offered a scholarship to go to ADFA, which is the Australian Defence Force Academy down in Canberra. So basically, they pull you out of school. You do an equivalent sort of schooling with the Defence Force, but it's more orientated to the defence basically and getting you ready, to serve and be part of the RAAF. There's a lot more testing that goes through, but I ended up, long story short, I got through. I graduated. I became a fighter pilot in the defence. I did 2 tours, and then on the second one, we were just doing a very simple reconnaissance mission, and I lost feeling from my waist down. Basically, I couldn't feel anything, which is an issue when you're 30,000 feet up in the sky and you've got no,
Yeah, is
control
there like excuse my ignorance, but are you controlling things with your legs as well
Yeah,
as
yeah,
your
yeah. A
yeah,
lot of things
okay.
you control with your
I've
feet.
never
Yeah,
been in a
you
plane
can
like
still land the aircraft without it, which I did. I'm still
thank
here to tell
goodness
the
for that.
story.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to sort of scramble and start using your head, and so I guess when all your experience and training comes into practice, because things can fail. Like I could have had an issue with the pedal itself, and you're stuffed.
Yeah.
Um, you still have to sort of overcome that. So, and then I think the biggest thing for me is I don't panic very much. I didn't panic then because I thought I was invincible. I didn't think anything was ever going to happen to me and whatnot.
Yes.
So, look, I knew though that something serious was going on because I just literally couldn't feel anything. I didn't even know I was sitting, and you're strapped in pretty tight.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we landed, and it took me about an hour to get out of the cockpit. And yeah, my father always said to me, he goes, always make friends with only 2 people when you get there. One is the chef and the other one's the doctor. If you get hungry, chef will feed you. If you get sick, the doctor will make you better. And I did it. I actually did follow that advice. And I did become very good, close friends with the defence doctor and base doctor, and he knew something was wrong.
Yes.
And we're going back in an age where there was no MRIs, and the CT scans were, they were just starting to evolve. We had them, but they were very old, outdated.
Yes.
Um, and you're running around with all due respect to them, all these surgeons are in there. They're in their like finishing years with like 2 years to go, and they're worn out, and they don't want any headaches. They just want simple textbook cases and
Yeah.
whatnot. Yeah, I think from there the journey just it begun. I guess that was the defining moment. The minute I took my last step off the ladder out of that aircraft, my whole life changed literally on a dime. Um, it took us nearly 11 months to find someone who knew what was going on and could fix it. And I guess, you go on these journeys not knowing, what's going to be ahead. But I think some things of the past prepare you for that. For me, it was my military training. I think if I didn't have such a stringent regime and a very strict life from the onset of my life. My parents are very, very strict European people. Both of them. There wasn't just one played good cop, bad cop. They were both hard. And
Yes.
now looking back, I know they did it because they didn't want me to suffer and, having to work physically and whatnot, like they did. But at the time, you just think, oh, they hate you and they're being,
They're being
mean and
mean.
stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so that in itself prepares you, it strengthens you because you think, oh, well, I can't be weak in front of these people, and I don't want to give them that satisfaction kind of thing. So that mentality sort of went into the defence. And then, you cop all the defence force regime and strictness, and, they prepare you for everything. But I think that helped me get through my life even till where we are today.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, look, it was a very scary moment in my life because I was going in for scans on these CT machines where, now a CT you're in and out in 3 minutes, and it gives you a full 3D bloody image. Where back then they're black and white, and all I got told was wherever you can see white is bad, and all I could see was white. Like there's no black. So they were sending me from hospital to hospital to hospital back then, and no one knew what was going on. And first they thought the machine was broken, and then the second one something was faulty too. And we're at the third machine. 3 machines can't be broken. Like it's just not possible. Um, and then I was sort of in pain, and I wasn't in pain, so I couldn't specifically say that for certain that there was something wrong. It's like sinisterly wrong, but I knew inside that there was something wrong. But again, it was a fight. Like my father and I was dragging ourselves to about 6 to 7 surgeons a day for 11 months.
Wow.
And that included natural paths and all sorts of holistic. Even when we went down the holistic
Yeah.
approach, Chinese medicine, did everything because
Mm.
I couldn't walk. Like,
Yeah.
I was having bouts of feeling coming in and going in both
Mm.
my legs. And then,
Yeah.
you got all the other bodily functions that go along with that area. So, it was a whole new world. And especially when there's no diagnosis or you're not a textbook, you're not what they taught you. What they taught them basically in uni back then you're in the too hard basket, piss off, let someone else worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And how old were you at this time? If you
So
don't
we
mind
were
me
about 22, I think it was, about
Yeah,
22,
still very
23. So,
young.
yeah, it was over about 24 years ago now, 23 years ago, yeah. So even in that, and for I know that seems like a really long time, and it is, but for something in like a field of medicine, it's not that long, like to come from where I was having like milligrams to work out what was going on. They were horrible tests. Like they were putting, I think, 1 in 10 in a wheelchair. They were paralyzing 1 in 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was a really high statistic. You got big, big, big needles. Light, you've got staying wide awake, and they're just throwing them into your spine and hoping for the best. Man, I went through hundreds of them because they had no other alternative. There was no other test. That was the pinnacle, and that's when the MRI took over from
Yes.
that myelogram test. And I think the first MRI that I had by that stage, I think it was on its way to RPA hospital. I think it was the first one. From memory, it was RPA who had the first MRI in New South Wales, and it was
Yes.
still coming from overseas in a container ship. Um, so yeah, but by that stage, we had found, a messiah, I guess, of neurosurgery and spines, and thanks to him, I'm still here to tell the tale, and I'm convinced that if we didn't find him that day, I don't think I would have been able to cope for very much longer.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And, obviously, highly motivated because when that's going on for you, because sometimes people ask, how do people are motivated about certain things? But it's like, well, you've got a really good reason to be motivated. When you're in that situation, you're motivated.
Yeah, look, I think I was a bit naive because I think my intention was just to get whatever the hell needed to be done and get back into the cockpit. Like, I just didn't think of
Get
anything
back into
else. There was
the
no
plane.
plan B.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? That was it.
Yes.
I worked and dedicated
Yeah.
my whole
Yeah.
short life to flying, and that's all I wanted
Mm.
to do. And I just wanted to get fixed and get back into the
Yes.
cockpit, but it didn't eventuate that way. Um, and then again, you have to adapt. Like in every scenario and every situation that happens, you have to adapt. Something changes. No matter how small or big
Yes.
it is, it throws you off the course. And like I use a lot of aviation analogies because for me it's easy. But if you're in a normal jet liner going on holidays, and they program the coordinates of where they're going to fly to, and something happens mid-flight that whether it's a storm or they're in lightning or there's a volcano with ash and they have to divert the course. They're still going to where they want to go, but they're doing
Yes.
it in a different way. Now, as a passenger, that means nothing because at the end of the day, you just want to land at bloody LAX or Heathrow.
Yes.
That's all you care about, and that and life to me is very similar to a flight because it's where you're going at some point, where you want to be, and it's sometimes not just as a direct route as you'd like. Um, you know, when I had the surgery and whatnot, I think it was 24, 26 hour surgery, the first operation I had. Um, it was very difficult to, I guess, to comprehend that life was going to change and what now. I think that was the moment I was in intensive care after I woke up because they had me on the ventilator for a few days. So they didn't want me to move, but you can still hear everything. Doesn't matter how knocked out you are. I could hear everything that was going on. There was no ability for me to respond, but I could hear everything.
That
Um,
must have been frightening to be hearing them talk about what was going on for you and not really but ask questions or get your head around it properly
yeah, it's a super
in a conversational
extraordinary.
way.
Yeah, it is. It's a super extraordinary feeling because you're in your body and you're not at the same time. You got people talking near you or around you or above you, and I had my parents there at the time, and I had a partner then. My partner at the time as well was there, and they're all explaining everything that's going on, and who's crying and who's not saying anything, and who's not asking the right questions, and and in your head you're thinking, well, ask them this, but you just can't. You're trapped, like you're physically trapped. Um, so that's an experience in itself. But I think in that moment, I knew that I was never going to fly again. I think reality hit hard real quick. And that's not having to say that I was ignorant to the fact that I knew that it was serious. But in my head, I was determined that I was going to get back to flying.
Yes.
Um, and still looked, even after I left hospital, I tried. I went and to see the best rehab guy privately, and man, we were doing things that we shouldn't be doing at certain levels and time. But I was still quite fit back then, so um, I think that helped a lot as well,
Yes.
especially with the core strength and things and upper body strength and things like that. So we just used it and just kept going. And I was killing myself. I had tears coming down my eyes, but I was determined that I was going to get back into that cockpit again. I got as far as a simulator, and I struggled in that. Like I struggled, and I thought, oh, it's only been 6 weeks, and we'll give it another 6 weeks. And we ended up treating it on a day by day basis, and we just got to the reality is that I wasn't going to fly
Yes.
again. So the RAAF didn't want to discharge me. They gave me an opportunity to remain within the defence. So I was offered a position to become a flight instructor, and I declined pretty quick. It wasn't even a think about it. It was like, no. I've dedicated all I've done in my life is to fly. I know that's been taken away from me. I can't sit here to teach someone else to do something that's all I wanted to do. And I know that sounds really selfish, but you know, I just had to overcome
No,
huge,
it's not. It's just knowing the truth about the situation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up accepting an opening in law. So I ended up becoming a defence lawyer. So I did all military law and things like that. So yeah, again, I had to go back into my head into the books and study, and everything was fast tracked and quickly done. And you've got 18 months to do a 4-year course, and if you can do it in 12, that'd be even better for us. But if you do it in 8, we'll give you an incentive, and it's like, well, just give me the bloody certificate now. I'll just go wing it. Like, I can't go any quicker than where I am. So basically, from the hospital and rehab and home, between all three places, I ended up like studying basically, and I had to learn everything. And I graduated with honours at the end of it all. And then, yeah, they just threw me literally in the deep end. So a lot of court martials and things like that. And then I did a stint overseas for 2.5 years in the States. So that was, um, an experience.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but whilst I was over there, I started feeling not well again. They had, at that stage, America had the MRIs. It was an old school one, but they had one. And I went in for one, and it started to grow back further down. So I ended up having to come back home again. Went back and saw the neurosurgeon that helped me initially, and
Yes.
he rushed me. I think I'm pretty dead certain he put me in that afternoon. I think I saw him in the morning, and I was admitted immediately for surgery the following morning. And again, that was just another setback. Now, you think, okay, I talk a lot about my spine, and it was my spine, but your spine is an operating system in itself. And you think about it like a data cable bank,
Yes.
where you're a server basically. Your brain's the modem, and the rest is the cables to get from the top all the way down. So you have to understand that your bodily functions I mentioned before, and your leg power and strength and all sorts of things get affected. It's not just your spine and rip it out and off you go running again tomorrow. It's not. And I think at that again, I was still thinking I was invincible at that point. I had the surgery. I was still practicing from bedside. Basically, I was doing representation from the bedside at that point.
Of course you were.
Yeah,
Based on what I know about you at this point.
had nothing else to
That's not
do.
surprising.
I was in hospital I was in the spinal unit at North Shore for about, I think it was about 5 months, I think, the second time around. So,
Okay.
had
Yes.
plenty of time of nothing to do. So we utilised it. Um, yeah, and then, we overcome it, and it was just basically a lot of back and throwing. And then they started discharging everybody to go into to become a civvy lawyer or barrister, basically. Um, and I missed the first. I thought I'd be the first lot of retrenchments to come through, but I wasn't, and I was like, damn. So, yeah, I ended up doing another. I think it was about 3 years. I think after the first few rounds, and then I think it was the fourth round. I said to them, just give it to me. Like, I'm like, there's 3 of us left. Like, who are you? There's no one else to get rid of. Oh no, we'll keep you here. We'll keep you here. We'll keep you here. And eventually, I ended up leaving. So they gave me my pack. Well, they called it a package back then.
Yes.
And yeah, I got headhunted up in Queensland because I was in Amberley at that time. So I got transferred up to RAAF base Amberley, and I got headhunted up there by a couple of law firms. And it was again my whole life has been stop start stop start stop start, because you sort of go okay for a year, and then something happens that throws you out for 6 months.
Yes.
And I ended up getting to the point where I just couldn't commit to working for a firm anymore, because it was just, you can't take someone's matter on, and then, halfway through a trial,
Yeah.
you're
Suddenly not
absent. Like, it's
available.
not fair to the
Mm.
client,
Yeah.
and it's just not the right thing to do. So I ended up just doing consulting work basically, and just more advisory and directory roles. There was no need for me to be taking everything on full on, because
Yes.
it came back really hard about 2014, I think it was. Yeah, to the point where I had my last rights read out. Like, I actually thought that it was it.
Yes.
I ended up, my whole body was black. It was, I was really sick. It was Christmas Eve. That was the worst time. And
Yes.
my neurosurgeon, they managed to get a hold of my neurosurgeon. He was about to step foot onto the plane to take his wife for a white Christmas in New York, and he let her go on her own, and he came back. Um, and it was just funny, not ha ha funny, but it was just a moment where your whole life sort of comes before your eyes in 30 seconds, and that 30 seconds seemed like a month, but it was quick and long at the same time. You've got him in the lift, me standing up, barely standing up, like leaning against the back of the lift. The neurosurge registrar was on the phone literally like this. She had the phone like this with a cannula in, trying to get it into me while she's talking to her best friend, who was an anesthetic doctor, and what drugs to mix up to knock me out, to try and get into my spine, to work out what the hell was going on and try and get it out. And then you look at your neurosurgeon. He wasn't my normal neurosurgeon at the time, but he had operated on me in the past, and we had a very good affinity and whatnot. He's looking at her and looking at me as if to say, "Why are you bothering? He's not going to even make it out of the lift." Like, I was pretty bad. And anyway, they knocked me out. They found an anesthesiologist had come in, the local one had come in to assist, and that was a 19-hour operation where they had to take all my metalwork had to come out. So I had years of metalwork in my spine, all had to come out to get access to the tumor from underneath, and more bone had to come out. And then we had to open intensive care. I was the only person in intensive care over that Christmas and New Year period, and I was in there for about 4 months in intensive care, lying flat. I couldn't move. Um, but then, I sneezed and the top part fractured. And then they rolled me, and then the bottom part fractured. And he's like, "Well, we can't go putting metalwork back in because it's going to defeat the whole purpose of taking it out. We're just going to have to ride the wave." And that wave was nearly 2 years in hospital. So from 2000 and about 2014 to 16, I think it was, I barely saw the light of day. A lot of treatments, a lot of chemo and radio, and the last round of it, I said to my wife, I just looked at her and I said, "This is it." I said, "I am not going through this again." I've spent 3 months hugging the toilet, vomiting, being violently ill. I was really in a bad way.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's a whole extra layer on that too, with all of the spinal issues going on.
yeah,
It's
and that
one
was,
thing
you get
vomiting
all the,
anyway. It's another thing when vomiting you could potentially end up with a fracture from vomiting,
well, I
couldn't you?
did.
Yeah.
I fractured 3 levels.
Yeah, yeah. So this is not just like there's vomiting and then there's, what was going on for you. And I
Yeah,
think
and then
that's a
you
whole other
obviously
level.
for me, I've got other comorbidities as well, like, as a result of it. Like,
Yeah.
it was one thing being a paraplegic, but I think the moment that I became a triplegic again, like, and this is the
Mm,
only reason I've been the last 3 years I've become a triplegic.
mm,
It's hard. My other arm isn't the best, and I don't know what I'd do if I lost everything,
mm.
because I need help to do everything as it is now, and
Yeah,
but at
yeah.
least I can contribute to pulling on a jumper and taking it off or doing
Mm,
something.
yes.
Um, but from being someone who was so independent and so hands-on and so physical, to have everything stripped away from you now, it's hard. I'm not gonna lie. The a lot of the people, you start meeting a lot of people in this sort of environment, and I guess through all this now, I've ended up becoming a disability advocate for people who need help, basically, who are
Yes.
not getting it. When you're in rehab, you hear, and you hear stories and you just think, hold on a minute, this isn't right. You're in a place here where the whole point of the word rehab is to rehabilitate you, to get you back to a point where you can be independent as best as possible.
Yes.
And you're the place that's supposed to be giving these people these tools in order to do that. but in fact, you're doing the opposite. Like, that to me is a conundrum. Like, how does that work?
Yes.
If I'm in here to learn how to walk again and you're telling me, well, there's no frames or you're not entitled to a frame to walk, well, then how do you expect me to do that if I've got no other means of power to get upright? And these
Yes.
are the hurdles that people were facing. And during COVID, I was in there for nearly 2 years, another 2-year period in rehab, or surgeries and rehab. So I didn't see, again, 2 years. I didn't see anybody.
Yeah, that would have been dreadful
And
because
that
you
was
would
a challenge in
die.
itself.
Yeah.
And I thought I need to start doing something from in here. So I ended up starting practice in my room basically. And we were running around. I was helping. There was an older fellow, and they were just refusing to give him anything. And there was a younger guy there who just had a freak accident, and he's getting knocked back because he's not entitled to this, not entitled to that. And I'm thinking, you guys all talk about it's too costly to do something, and when I'm saying you guys, I'm meaning like the NDIS now. But yet
Which is
you're
the National
potentially
Disability, what's the
insurance scheme.
recurrence scheme?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you think, you know, they'd be more vigilant to try and cut costs and keep costs from these
Mm.
blowouts.
Yeah.
But in fact, they just keep adding to them. Like, to
Mm.
stay in a rehab, it costs you nearly $3,500 a day.
Yes.
That's just for
Yep.
the room.
Mm.
Yeah. Then you got all the other things. So I think we worked it out to be close to $6,000 a day. Okay. In fact, I think on the NDIS schedule, I think a public holiday now, I think a normal weekday now rate for respite per day is just under $3,000. So that's just for one day. So some of these people are in rehab for 12 to 18 months,
Yeah.
depending on how severe the injury is. And this particular chap, he just had a freak bike accident. He was doing motocross stunts and mucking around, and he knew
Yes.
he did the wrong thing. And he goes, "Look, it happened. It happened. We've got to deal with it." And they were refusing to do a modification to his backyard steps to convert it from stairs to a ramp, so he could get into his home, because it was $1,700 and he needed 3 quotes and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you guys could get this done in 3 days and get him home, and you'd be so far more economically ahead
Mm.
than where you are.
Yeah.
Instead, he ended up being there for close to 17 months.
Mm.
You do the math at 17 months times $3,000 or $4,000, whatever it
Mm.
was back then.
Yes.
Well, I ended up representing him. I got knocked back the first time. A second time, I was very aggressive in my approach. We had an independent builder go there. I think it cost just under $3,000 to do the rail and everything that he needed. The job was started on a Monday. Wednesday it was completed. Friday he was home. So it's possible,
Yeah.
but they just need to be able to push the right buttons and pull the right strings. And the biggest thing for me is that I hate that they stick to a script.
Yes.
We are not, doesn't matter if you're disabled or not. We are not we're not identical. Like, my issues are different to you and to the next person and all your listeners. Sure, we can relate. There'll be someone there that has back pain, or
Yes.
might get migraines or whatever it is.
Mm.
But when you're representing someone, even me, when I look through someone's case, and they might be on paper identical, it could be that this person needs equipment, and then it's regardless whether it's a shower commode or a wheelchair or a walking frame,
Mm.
it's still equipment, yeah.
Yeah.
But their needs are different,
Mm.
and you might have 5 people that need shower commodes,
Yes.
but the needs on how they get onto them, like, they need to be hoisted onto them. Do they need to be wide? Do they need to be narrow? Do the wheels need to be, self-propelled? Do they need to be small at the front or rear, at the back? Or I have to go through all this. And I believe now that my path was that if I hadn't gone through what I had gone through all my life, and look, I've left huge gaps in my story back and forth, but I've given you
Yeah.
a pretty much overview
Yes.
of the jigsaw. And every day, like, still now, like, I just came out of hospital again. I'm out of remission. It's all come back again. I've got surgery on the night, so next Friday, and then the following week again. It's all back, and it only doesn't only take its toll on you, but everybody around you.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
think I told you that when we spoke last time. I can see very easily how people go to a downhill spiral,
Mm.
and it
Yeah.
doesn't take much.
Yeah.
If you're someone who can be easily persuaded, or you just are pushed so far into a corner and getting rejected,
Yes.
um, but I can see how you turn to alternative things, whether it's drugs or alcohol and things like that. I'm not going to lie and say it never crossed my mind, because I'd be a liar. It did. Like, I've got a liquor cabinet full, and a wine cellar full of wine. I could have. It was easy. I could have, and it was all at my arm's reach, and it still is. And it's very easy for me to go and grab it and
Yeah.
start.
So why don't you?
I don't know whether I'm smart or stupid. I actually don't know. Look, I've got a very good. I think having a very good network around you
Mm.
is important and
Yeah.
vital. My mum just happened to be a nurse, so she's around me pretty much 24/7 while my wife works and whatnot, and she comes to me to the hospitals and things like that. So, and she's always there. I've always got someone.
Yes.
Even medically, like, I've become really close friends with a lot of my medical teams, my neurosurgery team in particular, urology and things like that. So we've actually become friends, like, we'll come to each other's houses for dinner and things like that. And I will go to conference for them and, do something similar to what we're doing now. And I'll get asked a lot of questions, especially in relation to my neurosurgery. I was, at the time that I had my first surgery done, I was the only one in the country who had that much instrumentation put into someone's spine at the one time.
Yeah.
Until this day, they still teach off my imaging
Yes.
back then on instrumentation, because it was done so well.
Mm.
Um, so they call you back in and you go in and help these people, and you could be dealing with all sorts of questions, and you might have a surgeon call. Last night I had a surgeon call and basically tell me to give a kick up someone's bum to get up and get on with life, because the surgery that they had was minimal, and there is no way that you could be in this much pain for the amount of surgery that we did.
Yes.
And then he rings me back, or he sends me a text message about 2 hours after I spoke to the patient. He just basically just said, "Love your work. Don't know what you said, but guess what? He feels all of a sudden miraculous. He's had a miracle. He's up and he's fine."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Look, people deal with things, and I don't know what was going on in his life. Like, he
Yeah.
could have had a marriage breakdown. He could have lost, someone
Mm.
close. Maybe he didn't have someone there that he wanted.
Mm.
Maybe he didn't want to go home. Maybe just have, there's a lot of things that come into it. I remember once a few years ago, I had a guy. He had a decent surgery. It wasn't small by any means.
Mm.
And you could just tell that he just had no incentive, desire, incentive to move on and get out of there. Like, the hospital will keep you in to a
Mm.
certain point, but then after that they'll say, and for them it's all a business now. Like, this industry
Yes.
it's a business.
Yeah.
No matter which way you dissect it and carve it up, it is a business at the end of the day.
Yes.
And then they start looking at figures, and they've got to work to a bottom line.
Mm.
So, I think after 2 weeks, there's 3 or 4 grand a day that they're getting paid from your private health insurer for the
Mm.
bed. I think ends up getting cut in half after that 14th
Okay.
day. So, unless you absolutely necessarily need to be there, they sort of back off. But then they start putting pressure on, or, and it's happened to me numerous times. Like, I'm clearly not well to go home,
Mm.
and you're asking me, all these questions, and I know how they start them, so I nip them in the bud before they even.
Yeah. So you know what this conversation
I
is.
know it's going
You
to be about,
recognize it.
I've been here for
Yeah.
3 weeks, blah
Yes.
blah,
Yeah.
and then they
And
sort of back off.
that's a challenge, is it, within our health system. And I think in Australia, our health system is probably a lot better than a lot of others, but there's by no means perfect, and there's a lot to be done. Look, I just wanted to ask you though. Sorry to cut you off, but I'm really what
No,
I'm
it's
really
fine.
intrigued by, and watching you, talking to you, and hearing about your life story. I think the theme that I see is that you find purpose, is that ultimately, no matter, you have whatever's going on and you've got the grief of what's going on, or the shock, or all of the things that you go through, the amount of time that you've spent alone in a bed, just laying there, whatever, and had so much time to think. And you could choose to stay in the, oh my God, this terrible thing's happened to me, and just stay in that place forever. It sounds to me like what you do at some point is you turn your mind to purpose. You turn your mind to, what can I do? And so rather than dwelling on what you can't do now, what's not possible. It's like, well, what is possible? What can I do? And then the ultimate is, and this is something whenever I look at studies on health and what makes people healthy and what makes a good life, and how people stay mentally well and physically well, a lot of it is about, it's two things. So it's kind of gratitude and being sort of just dealing with what is and just getting on with what you have. But it's also the ability to take yourself, to stop focusing on you and to focus on others, or to focus on like your, for you, it's your disability advocacy.
Yeah.
So it's focusing on other people. So instead of staying in the oh my god, whatever stuff that's going on in your brain, it's kind of going, all right, that's enough. I think I'm just going to focus outwardly and look at what purpose, where I can find purpose and what I can change, who I can help. And does that feel, what I've just said there, does that feel like that makes sense for what you've
Yeah, look,
done?
I think you hit it nail on the head. For me, it's I think diversion. I think it's the form of diversional therapy. I already know what's wrong with me. Like I already know
Yes.
what's wrong.
Mm.
I feel it. I live it every day. I'm in pain 24
Yes.
hours a day.
Yeah.
Sitting for me, my wheelchair is difficult. And these are things that I have to deal with. Like
Yes.
I accept now the fact I'm a triplegic, but what I don't accept is that I can't sit in my chair
Mm.
without being pain free. Even to go
Yeah.
to a doctor,
Mm.
it is hell for me. Like it is absolute hell.
Mm.
Yesterday I had to go and get tests and see the oncologist and whatnot,
Mm.
and they know the situation, but yet
Yes.
it's like they don't care. You know what I mean? And I know that may not be true, but it's like, let's hurry this up because I'm not comfortable and I've still got an hour to get home yet. And every
Yes.
bump on the road is going into my back.
Yeah.
Whatever
Yeah.
feeling I have left, the pain is just
Mm.
immense.
Yes.
Um, and how many drugs can you swallow? Like they don't hand them out like they used to anymore. Now they've got these new Safe Script, New South Wales. Then you're monitored now. So if you're not following the script to the absolute T, and you take an extra one, and I'm one down for the morning, I better go get another box. They won't give it to you. Like, so and a lot of my pain specialists, they're just not giving narcotics out, irrespective. They know the pain that I'm in.
Yes.
Um, and they do now after we've had really in-depth conversations and brutal ones.
Yes. Yeah.
They've sort of woken up and said, okay, look, we'll give them, but we've got to do them on this sort of basis. And that's great, but how do I live my life? You're okay, you're pain free, but I'm not, and I don't think that's fair. You've got
Yes.
nothing wrong with you. Like I'm missing, I think it's close to 92% of my actual spine now.
Mm.
It's all been
Okay.
accumulated by metalwork, whether it's rods, hooks, screws, bolts, a whole lot.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
whatever's left is not much, but whatever's left is hurting.
Mm.
And then, like I said to you, I've got other comorbidities. It spread. Like my knee had to both my hips had to get replaced
Okay.
because it got completely. My left one got completely eaten away. So that
Mm.
prevents you from sitting upright in a wheelchair. So you're
Okay.
having all these other surgeries as a result of the initial diagnosis,
Yeah.
and it's another thing you need to get over.
Yeah.
Like it's. Yeah, I spoke to the urologist yesterday for the surgery we're having next Friday, and he shook his head and he goes, "You know what?" He goes, "I think if it was someone else in your shoes," he goes, "I don't think I would even contemplate considering surgery on them." He said, "But you've just got such a good, head on you. You
Mm.
just look forward." And
Yeah.
I get that. I get told that a lot, but at times I don't feel it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I've still got a family. My head goes where I've still got a family to worry about.
Yeah.
I need to provide for them as
Mm.
best I can.
Mm.
I've got two elderly parents. My
Mm.
in-laws. My father-in-law passed away right when I was in the midst of it all, like coming
Mm.
back again. So it was challenging. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't look at the outside factors.
Mm.
I used to, years ago, I used to say, I don't care about me because I can have a pill and the pain goes away. But your family don't have that luxury because they still
Yeah.
witness you being in pain and being ill
Yes.
and whatnot.
Yeah, and these kind of challenges, I think, are hard on everyone involved, aren't they? It's not only the person with the health issues, but the people who support that person with health issues.
And at times
It's a
they're
real
actually
journey for
some of
them
the
too.
worst. Yeah, I think I actually believe that the people that are around us, they're no different to us being in, like superstars. We've got the Olympics going on at the moment. Like if I was, a 1,500 meter swimmer, everyone's eyes are on me. And at the moment, I think that's how my life feels,
Mm.
and it's not a star of a show that you want to be a part of, but it's the one that you've been dealt. And there's no, we can't change it now. I can only
Yeah.
maintain it, manage it, and keep moving forward. But I've always, been a believer that I don't go through what I've gone through in vain. Like for me, I think there's a reason why I've had gone through this, because I would have never been able to help the people that I help now.
Yeah. And that's actually why it's really important, because what you've been telling me today and when I spoke to you the other day is how you are making it real for the surgeons. You are letting the surgeons and the medical teams know this is not on, this is okay, this is not okay. These are the things you need to know, these are the things you need to understand, or whether it's in rehab or wherever it is. Because honestly, not people don't know.
No,
People
they
don't
don't.
know what they don't know. They don't understand what they don't understand.
Yeah.
And there's only so much, like even just talking to you, I can sort of just get like mentally kind of get a bit of a picture of what you're talking about, but I don't know. I'm not in it. So you are the only one and people in your situation who can actually say the truth. And I think we need to say the truth. We need to talk about the truth, because if we don't deal with the truth, we can't fix anything.
No.
And even if that fixing is being more aware of someone's comfort or what that can look like, or more aware of accessibility for people or whatever it is, but these are really important conversations to have. And you're instead of making other people around you feel, because what could happen, and I think maybe what does happen a lot, is we don't want other people around us to feel uncomfortable, so we kind of just don't say anything because we don't want to rock the boat or make people feel bad. And the intention isn't necessary to deliberately make people feel bad or whatever, but it is actually, if we don't address these things, if we don't talk about them, they can't be fixed.
Yeah,
So
and I
you actually
absolutely
do
agree
need
with you.
to.
I agree with you 150% on that, Fiona, because I came from a generation where back then, a doctor was like a priest. If he said this is what has to happen, then it was yes, sir, yes, sir. You don't question him, you don't
Yes.
question the surgeon.
Mhm.
If they said you got to do this, that's it, you do it, and because that's what they've said.
Yes.
But as time evolves, and I started feeling that they were trying to do things and things weren't working, or things were going backward, I was getting worse
Mm.
rather than getting better.
Yeah.
Um, and coming from the background that I came from, it was literally like the penny just dropped. And I thought, you know what, this can't keep going on. And I started questioning them. Why are we doing this when this is a situation? And
Yeah.
I had a lot of time. You can appreciate I've had a lot of time to research the human body. I'm very well inept with medicine. I actually ended up doing my GAM stats. One of the neurosurgery registrars drove me insane to practice. She wanted me to practice medicine. So as a joke, I ended up doing the GAM stats and I passed.
Yeah.
Um,
So what is that? Sorry, I don't
the
know
GAMS
what
is
that is.
to get into medicine basically. So it
Okay.
would have been a whole new degree to get into become a doctor basically.
Yes.
Um, and for a while there, I thought, okay, I'll change and I'll become an orthopedic surgeon, and I'll just do hips and knees, and try and come up with some strategy that an athlete can get back onto the track or onto the field, in record time with something that I create an event. That was where I was headed. And then I quickly sort of thought, you know what, why am I punishing myself even more? Like, be real here.
Yes.
For me, it was a distraction. I took the focus off my issues because I was in hospital. I knew I had issues. I get a nurse coming every 2 hours with something, telling me that I've got an issue and I need to take this pill for this, or I've got a pill for that, or I got to go have a scan for that. So I didn't need reminding of why I was there. Um, you know, um, Mentally, it takes its toll. I'm not going to lie and say that I'm invincible, because I'm not. How do I deal with it? If I'm going to be honest with you, I actually don't know how I deal with it. Um, I think the military sort of teaches you to shut all your feelings. Like it's almost like I don't care, if that makes sense. And I know that sounds really strange, but I think to your listeners, I think some people will relate, like especially if you've got kids and whatnot. Like you've got to just keep going. You don't have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no option. You've got to feed these kids. You got to wash them, clothe them, whatever it is. If and for me, my baby's my business now, and I've got a clientele list, and if I can't serve them and keep up with their requirements, then I shouldn't be doing what I do. But again, it's me managing my diary. I was letting a lot of people dictate the way I did things, and that was, again, a way out for me. I used to speak to a therapist, I'm not going to lie. I used to speak to her every week. And I haven't spoken to her for about 6 months, if we're being real. I know this is going to sound stupid. I just haven't had the time to sit down and talk about, basically. Um, and I know I'm strong enough in my head that I know that if I have to, that I will kind of go there. But a lot of people are scared, or they just think, oh no, you just get this. There's still that stigma out there that you see someone. Um, I think it would be very abnormal for someone who, even a quarter of my situation, wouldn't have a thought go through their head. You just wouldn't be normal. Like, it just
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah,
be possible.
yeah. And the good
Um,
thing about a therapist as well is that, because in your situation, I don't know, I'm thinking out loud here, so you can
yeah,
tell me if I'm wrong, tell me if I'm off track. But I feel like to a certain level, you would feel like you're burdening some of the people around you, or like you're making their life hard, or it's that they're doing it tough because of you in some way.
absolutely.
Not that
Yeah,
you're to blame,
exactly.
but just it is what it is.
Yeah,
And so the last thing that you want to do is offload all of your mental, like all of the crap that's going on in your head, on those people as well.
correct.
So having someone that's just outside of it, where you can kind of go, "Oh, all these things are happening," and just kind of just offload all of that stuff, is much healthier than kind of offloading it on your wife or whatever, because they're dealing with enough already. They're like that. They and you regardless of what's going on in life, your partner is not your therapist, right?
No,
We
that's
need to have, we need, for a healthy relationship, there does need to be a certain
absolutely.
separation from that stuff. So it's important to have someone
Yeah,
else,
look,
whether
I
it's a
think,
friend or whether it's a therapist, but someone who's able just to deal with that with you.
yeah, and I completely agree with that. I think, as far, I know that we're all a family unit, but at the end of the day, we're still individuals.
Yes.
And we've all got responsibilities and whatnot. Like, she's got to answer to people at her work and things like that. And the last thing I want to come home, and not that she would dismiss me or shut me out, but I just think that the little time that I see her in this window, that I'm okay. I don't want to be
Yeah.
wasting it, to me, in nonsense, when I can fill it with that void with happiness and just other stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and
Like I
you
said,
wanna create beautiful memories and beautiful moments, and actually live, like, have your life. You're alive now, you're right here, right now, you're alive, this is your life.
and that's
You wanna
exactly
live, and
how
so
I feel now.
talking to someone separately, that's fine, as you need to, but then just with your family, be able to just be present with your family and just live your life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's the attitude that we've got now. I'm not,
Mm,
you know, people, like, I remember years ago, people, there was a huge thing. We're ready to see yourself in 3 or 5 years' time, and I think now, if I was back then getting interviewed, then with knowing what I know now, my response would be very, very, very different.
mm.
But
In what way? In what way
look,
would it
I
be
just
different?
think, you don't know what's going to happen in 3 or 5 years' time. I could have the perfect plan,
Mm,
but you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
no.
I know of who's a client of mine now.
Mm,
Um, Literally in that situation, went to have an interview. He was fine.
mm,
As soon as he came out of the office, he tripped over something and went down a flight of 90 stairs.
mm.
He's now a quadriplegic.
Yeah,
He snapped his neck cold.
yeah.
And it was ironic that he said to me, he said, we ended up talking just outside of, the actual matter itself.
Mm,
And his response, we were talking, and I said, "I had the interview go." I just tried to try and cheer him up,
mm.
because he's got a sense of humour.
Yeah.
He goes, "Would you believe, Has?" He goes, "Yeah." He said to me, he goes, "Where do you see yourself in 3 years' time if we employed you?" And I said, "What was your answer?" And he just stared at me, and he goes, "What would you have answered?" He said, "Knowing now that what you know now." And I just said to him, I would have probably thrown the question back onto him if it was me personally. A, because I'm a smart ass, and B, because it's just, not a question that, I like to answer. You're asking me, akin to how long's a piece of string? I don't know. Well, I don't know what's happening. Yeah, great. I'd like to be here maybe in 3 years' time. I'd like to have achieved this, this, and this, but Mate, things happen, you know. I could walk out the door, trip over and break my neck. And he looked at me, he goes, "That is exactly the answer I gave him."
Oh my god.
And
But that's
it was just utter silence, you know.
oh, that's oh,
And
wow.
it put me back. And he goes, I said to him, what do you mean? I said to him, he goes, "I can tell you everything." My exact words to him was, "I can tell you everything that you want to hear, but in a moment, I could just walk out here and trip over and break my neck."
Mm,
And it was just a freak moment where you just think, wow, this person's life, literally
mm,
5 minutes prior, was not fine. He was
yeah.
looking, he was a senior executive.
Mm.
He's a very switched on fellow.
I got shivers going through my body. That is just such a freaky story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, then now he's dealing with hurdles with the NDIS because they're not giving him the care and support that he needs. He needs a particular chair. Obviously, now he needs a chin control because he can't operate it. But they're determined for him to use his hand, but he's a quadriplegic. And I have to explain to people that a quadriplegic doesn't have the ability to use their legs or arms and therefore has got chin control.
Mm,
And I've got 50 pages of reports to back that up by
mm,
various medical fields.
mm.
And it's still not enough because they're reading off these blasted scripts.
Scripts.
And I'm like, and I stop them. I just don't let them talk
Yeah.
anymore. I used to. I just say, look, just stop reading
Yeah.
and start writing what I'm telling you and start adding to your file what I've just sent you because this
Yeah.
is what's real. These are the facts and they're undisputed. This
Mm,
client now has a C3 severing of the spinal cord.
mm,
He can only use his chin barely, and this is what he needs to be approved. Oh, but it's
mm.
a $3,000 addition to the chair. Bad luck. That's what the scheme's there for. The
Yeah.
scheme is there for this purpose,
Yeah.
so it needs to be applied.
Mm.
But that's a 3-month argument. Why should it take me 3 months to
Yeah.
argue something? So this guy can't move. He's already trapped in his body for the rest. He's only 45.
Mm.
He might have another 30,
Yeah.
40 years left in him. So he can't move in his own chair for the next 30
Mm.
years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it gets me because I can relate to it. And I think I'm so passionate about it. And I'm not putting tickets on myself, but I've not lost a matter at the moment with the
Mm.
disability advocacy. I've
Well,
not
put
lost it.
tickets on yourself. That's fine. Like, you're doing
And I
great.
won't.
Like,
And
good.
it's just
Yeah.
something that I've become so passionate about that I will
Mm.
not lose. And
Yes.
the more resistance I get, the harder I push back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, because I've got the experience now medically, legally, and personally now, like I can relate. Like I can look at this guy in the eye and go, look, I understand what you're going through.
Mm. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
may have one arm, but it's not strong, and I still need the amount of care that he needs is no different to the care that I need because
Yeah.
we still need the same things.
Yeah. And I
You know,
understand what you're going through isn't I know how you feel. They're two very different things. So I don't think anyone knows how anyone else feels. You can think you might, but we don't ever really know. But you can say I understand because you've got a lot of experience, similar experience. And so I think I understand. I understand isn't insulting, but I think I know how you feel can can be
yeah,
because like I don't know how you feel. And
yeah,
even if I had
yeah,
the same
yeah.
injuries, the same issues, I don't know how you feel.
That's right. Everyone's different. Like I said
I know
earlier,
how I feel.
you could have 3 paraplegics in the room, and everyone's got different
Yeah,
issues. Like one might have no pain at all and might have a mental issue because of it, or the other guy just wants to go and find the local bloody rugby league wheelchair team and start playing sport for them. Like everyone's got different mindsets.
yeah,
We work
yeah.
with these people, and like I said before, I don't take a cookie cutter approach
Mm,
to when I represent my
yeah,
clients because they're not. Then you can't
yeah,
cookie cut a thing, and it could be
yeah,
the simplest matter that takes the longest, and
yeah.
then you know I can't save the world and I can't help everybody, but the people that I
Mm.
get
You
referred
can
to,
help somebody.
yeah, I help a lot of people.
Mm,
But the cases that I get are now pretty much last resort. Like they've probably had another 3 people represent them, whether they've been
yeah,
lawyers or advocates, and they've got nowhere. And I get them when they're at their end.
yeah,
So what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to get them in the beginning to try and nip it in the bud, to try and save a few months or years in some cases, um, before it gets to that point.
yeah.
Because in that period, these people still have to live.
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
And no one
And
understands that, like, what do we do between point A? Even if I'm having a conversation with them on a Monday and they can't do anything until Tuesday,
mm,
that person still has one day to go through whatever they're dealing with. They still have an extra. So you've just added another day of pain or mental
yeah.
illness or strain or whatever it is that
Yeah.
person's
It's a
going
mild
through.
inconvenience to you, and to that person, it's
Yeah.
huge.
And
Yeah.
I feel like I've failed them if I can't get a result. So I keep pushing, and I've got to the point now where I don't care how hard I push,
Mm,
um, because they've got an attitude of they don't care
yeah.
what responses they give us. So why should I care how hard I push? If this
I
is the
think
way
that
you guys want to play the game,
the
well then,
problem with government, like with systems and government systems and things like that, they have their place, and there's good things about them, but there's a lot of rigidity in these systems, and a lot of inability, it seems, of people to, like you said, I would imagine you might have, of course, you might have guidelines. I understand there's got to be guidelines, and and there's a lot of people kind of rorting these systems. However, in these cases that you're talking about, I just don't understand that level of rigidity. I would think that every single one of those cases would be an individual by individual case, and you'd be looking at exactly what you're talking about, the practicalities. If this person can only use their chin, they can't use their arm. So, like, why is that not just, that's just a sentence, and once you've said that sentence, then like it's a different conversation. For the life of me, I can't understand why that is not just a sentence, and then the conversation moves on to, well, let's just deal with where we're at then. I just
yes.
don't. I can't
I think a
do
good
that.
analogy for what you're saying is this, and this is the way I feel when I deal
Yeah.
with the people that are on the other end of the phone or
Mm,
the other end of the emails,
mm,
is if you've had a heart rupture, like if your aorta's ruptured, right? You're on the clock. You don't have,
yeah,
like, you need to get help, yeah, or you're
yeah,
going to die within 30 minutes.
mm,
Are you going to go and get the yellow pages or get on Google and try and find, go look for a cardiologist or
yeah,
cardiothoracic surgeon in that minute to save your life? Or are you going to sit there and think, oh, no, you know what? I'm going to go do it this way because this is what I've been told.
yeah. This is what the book says. This
Yeah,
is what the
so let's go
instructions
by the
I've been
book
given.
and we'll just see how that works out.
Yeah.
And I had a patient or client, he passed now, and they wanted to close the file on it. And I thought, you know what? No, these family and his wife and children deserve to know that this was going to happen eventuated.
Mm,
And I ended up setting a precedence now that, I made them commit to everything that he needed.
mm,
Well, we weren't, there was going to be no financial gain to the family because he had passed.
mm,
But we wanted to know that what we had put forward was going to be accepted, and then he
yeah.
was going to be a recipient of it.
Mm,
And that took me 12 months because they just kept on going, the case is closed. I said, no, the case isn't closed.
yes.
I said, this is not on. I said, I still have a responsibility to the family now. I can't come
Mm,
back and say case is closed, move on
yeah.
to the next one. I said, it doesn't work that way. Life is not like that.
Mm,
And I said to one of them, I said, if you had your child, if this was your child, would you be content with that? And she cried on the phone.
mm,
And she goes, my child's got a learning disability. I'm like, okay, that could be an impact.
mm.
That's fixable.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be on the NDIS. And I know I might sound it's horrific and horrible for saying that.
Mm,
But when you're in it, in the situation, and you're hearing stories of people getting, 25-year jail sentence for rape, and the day one they're out are on a $1.5 million NDIS plan because their head's not right.
mm,
But yet I've been fighting for 6 months for an 8-year-old girl who needs a wheelchair, and they're telling me she can walk when she's got a T8 injury,
yeah.
severed spine at the T8 level. She's not walking again.
Mm,
And it took me 6 months to get someone to say, yeah, I think you're right. We might need to approve her for a wheelchair.
yeah.
To the point the parents sold their family car to get her a chair. And
Yeah.
we were only talking $6,000 to $8,000, I think, at the time. We weren't talking like 80 grand for a chair like mine, for instance.
Yeah.
And this is what I deal with every day. And,
Yeah. I can
you
see
know,
what motivates you.
and that to me is a driver. Like, I'm not going to let this 8-year-old, get carried around everywhere she goes. And I said to them, what's the alternative? Every time they couldn't give me an answer. They kept reading off the script. At this time, blah, blah, blah.
Mm,
Stop reading the script. Give me an answer. And
yeah.
I think the point, my main point is they've got the system in itself overall is probably a B plus, yeah?
Mm.
But the operators within it are an F,
Mm.
because you've got people that have no experience or no knowledge running basic other people's lives, and that's when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of it all, that's exactly
Yeah.
what they're doing.
Yeah, just a tick or a cross on a form or
That's
something
all
can
it
make
is.
a
You check a
difference
box
to
and you
change
move on to
someone
the next
else's
thing.
life. Yep.
And
Yeah.
that person who has no experience, absolutely no experience. I asked them now, what experience have you got in this with this situation? Oh no, look, I just employ to approve and disapprove things.
Yeah.
So you have no experience whatsoever.
Mm.
And yet you're telling me that this person can't have this, or is not entitled to this,
Mm.
when you don't have any experience. And I
Yeah.
go back to the cardiothoracic surgeon.
Mm.
Your life is on the clock. Are you going to go to someone who doesn't know anything about cardiothoracic surgery? Or are you
Mm.
going to take the first guy that's in the emergency who's got a half a chance of saving your life?
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It is years ago I did some fire warden training many years ago, and they were showing us videos and talking to us about different emergencies that happened. And I have a friend who also was working for BBC at the time when there were some fires in the underground in London. I think was it King's Cross Station? I can't
might have
remember
been,
which
yeah.
station it was. And he said that like the fire was on the escalator. There was a fire on the escalator, and he said that so staff went down to the bottom and were stopping people from getting on the escalator. There was people punching the staff and getting on the escalator, and to their death, right? And I also saw other things like where there'd be a shop and there was a fire at the entrance to the shop in the chip display, and there was only one way in and one out of the shop. People were still walking in to buy their milk, right? And human beings, some human beings anyway, seem to have a real inability to reframe and kind of go, oh, okay, hang on, the situation's changed. Hang on, this doesn't fit the script. Hang on, this doesn't fit. To be able to kind of go, okay, I've got these rules, or I've got in my mind this set idea of what I'm going to do. Look around, okay, it looks like the situation's changed. Maybe I need to rethink this. Some of us seem to have a much more rigid mind that is unable to look at new information
Yep.
and look at I don't know, it just seems to be a human trait that some humans have more struggle with this than others.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Like, there's just no, some people are so set in their ways.
Mm.
Like I was at hospital yesterday, for instance, and there was a gentleman there, and normally he goes and sees one person first, and then blah blah. But this particular person was running late.
Mm.
He got held up with other patients, and the
Mm.
other person had finished early.
Mm.
And he made a whole drama and shenanigan about, oh no, I got to go her first, and she's like, it makes no difference.
Mm.
Like, and at the end I said, mate, if it's bothering you that much, don't worry about it, mate. I'll take the spot. And I did. I ended up going in, and I would talk to her for about 10 minutes as the nurse, and she's like, I don't understand. She goes, he has to come and see me anyway, whether it's first or second, it makes no difference.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, and I know he's pretty ill, I'm thinking, you must have been an asshole in your life, because to be in the situation that you're in, knowing that you're on a, before Christmas limit estimate, and you're
Mm.
still acting in that way,
Mm.
that's wired into you.
Yeah.
That's just who you are as a person, as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned. And
Yeah.
then when you've got a whole waiting room looking at each other going, what the hell?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I just said, I'll take it, mate. What to do? I don't care when I see her. I've got to see her now or after. It makes no difference. Look at her see her.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in his head, I had to go see the other person first.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things I think that I've learned the most in my life by, life itself and by speaking to people like you, is that ability to actually be flexible on your mind around things and reassess things, see what a new reality is and go from there. That's a huge part. I think in life is not easy. Life is not easy at all. And it's really, really hard for some people, and harder for some than others. But ultimately, the more flexible we are in our mind, the easier is probably the wrong word, but the better the outcome will be ultimately. I think the more fixed we are in our mind, we make it harder on ourselves, harder than what it already is.
Yeah,
And so I
and
think
people,
having
I
that
think people get,
flexibility of mind is
look,
important.
a lot of people, I find that you got sort of two ends of the coin, yeah, two
Mm,
sides of the coin. You've got people that are fearful of success. Now, that success could be
mm,
you getting better, or you know, beating, if it's cancer or tumor, whatever it is, right?
yeah,
Then you've got the other side where they fear everything.
mm,
You know, they fear
yeah,
death, they fear, you know, not having an income,
mm,
and both sides are legitimately warranted for in some people's instances.
yeah,
This man I was telling you was a quadriplegic. You know, he was on, I think, $300,000 a year salary. He's
mm,
not working anymore now. There's no income coming in.
yeah,
His wife's working. How are they going to pay the mortgage? So I, you know, and this is what I also do externally. So I sit down. I represent. You know, the advocacy just doesn't stop at working, getting things that they need. Yes, it helps for me renegotiating these situations with banks,
mm,
brokers, you
yeah,
know, electricity companies, water
yeah,
company. Like it people don't understand the gravity of what one moment in life,
yeah,
and it is usually a split second thing. Like when you get
mm,
hurt or get injured or have an accident,
mm,
it's literally quicker than a click of a fingers or a blink of an eye.
yeah, yeah,
And that, you know, whatever eventuates from in that moment,
mm,
it's going to dictate the rest of your life,
yes,
whether you want to like it or not. And it's how
mm,
you adapt. And some people don't. I've had people that have committed suicide halfway through me representing them. You
yeah,
know, and I've warned people, this guy, he's not right in the head. Oh, you're
yeah,
not, they look at me, they go, you're not a bloody psychiatrist, you're not an expert.
yeah,
I don't need to be an expert. I can tell this guy is not right. You need to keep him on watch.
yeah.
Next morning, they found him, he committed suicide. You know, and I'm
Yeah.
like, this
Also
could be
too, to
preventable.
clarify too, that there's no shame, but we all manage things the way we do, and I'm using you as an example of someone who's quite mentally strong and really managed this really, really well. Not everyone does, and it's no shame about those people either.
No
I
way.
there's no intention for me in highlighting the good things and that you've been able to do in judging anyone who wasn't able to deal with things in their life, because that's just how it is. We're all at different places and we've all got different levels. And you've talked about it, just even just your personality, your childhood. There's different things that set you up to be this way, and then you also made a whole lot of choices along the way as well.
Yeah, I
And
think look, life is all about choice, isn't it? From the minute you
yeah,
wake up, you know, what we're going to
yeah,
have for breakfast is a choice.
yeah,
When am I
yeah,
going to get dressed for the day? It's a choice.
yeah.
We all have choices, and you know, some people make wrong ones, and you know, some make
Some people make different choices.
different
Simple as
choices. You
that.
know,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's everyone's journey, and it's no
yeah,
different to a parent telling a child not to do something, or you know, maybe try doing this instead of this because
yeah,
we've already gone through it and it doesn't work.
yeah, yeah,
Do you know what I mean? But
yeah,
that's their journey to take.
yeah,
You know, I can only like, and again, as an advocate, I can only advise what I believe is the best way forward.
yeah,
If I'm
yeah,
getting told on the other side of the table, no, this is what I want you to do,
yeah.
then I've got a choice to say, hey, look, listen, this isn't going to work
Mm,
between us. You need to go find someone else,
yeah.
or okay, I'll do it your way,
Mm,
but you know, and I don't charge a lot of these people. Well,
mm,
90%, 95% of these people, I don't charge. So
yeah,
this is all pro bono work. I get
yeah,
no financial benefit out of it, gain out of this.
yeah.
There are a few that I do charge, and you know, for whatever reasons, I have to because
Mm,
it's a lot more work, and I have to
yeah,
employ OTs and you know all different things. So that they all
yeah,
cost money. That has to come at a cost because that's time. Yeah. But for the best part, and especially when there's children involved, there's just money doesn't even
yeah,
come a factor. So for me, the drive is that just winning is enough for me.
yeah, yeah. Look, I am super aware of time, that
That's
we've
okay.
gone way over, but that's
That's
well, we're not way over, we're a little bit over, and that's okay because it's such an interesting story. It's such an important story. But there's just probably two little places I'd like to just quickly cover
sure, sure.
before we end. So one is I I know that sometimes when you get a terrible diagnosis or or you're living with a disability or issues, that sometimes the way people treat you or the way they talk to you, that people don't know how to talk to you or treat to you. Is there anything in regards to that? Any advice you'd like to give people who, in regards to that, if they don't know what to say or they don't know how to treat you? Is there anything in regards to that that you have advice around?
Yeah. Look, I think the first thing is smile because some people make fools of themselves And just to prevent embarrassing them any further, sometimes I just pause and I'll TikTok in my head really quick. Like I'm really usually very fast on my feet. Um, I guess people need to understand that no one understands a situation that person's in at that particular moment. Yeah, like I said earlier,
Mm.
you don't know what's happening in that person's life. They could be disabled for 20 years and have no issues whatsoever, and
Yeah.
then maybe a parent passes away. You know, it's
Mm.
it's very it's a good question and it's a very tough one to answer. The advice I would go and say to you in one word is smile, because
Yeah.
it's the easiest way to not put yourself into anything and not to embarrass
Yeah.
people anymore. And look, I'm not going to lie, I've embarrassed a lot of people along my journey, and
Yeah.
I've made them feel like really like shit, because some people just need it. They need a huge reality check
Yeah.
that, you know, I'm in a wheelchair, I'm up against a wall to try and make room for you to go through, but yet you're so stupid that you're coming on the inside of me and between me and the wall when
Yeah.
you've got 20 meters of space over there that I've made for you deliberately to leave me the hell alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That for me is my, my clicker. Like, that's my kryptonite. I
Yeah.
go out of
Yeah.
my way to be courteous because I know that I've got a really big wheelchair and it takes up room.
Mm.
And yet you're finding every option to come in between me and a wall when I've left you all that space. Why?
Yeah.
Like, are
Yeah.
you that stupid? It happens all the time, and I call them out now. I don't care anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes
It's
you just have to tell people.
sometimes you
And,
just have to tell them, and I
and
don't
look, the
care
other
if
thing too
I.
is when people are dealing with you, I would say probably the best advice, maybe, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but one is the other person he's a human being, whether they're in a wheelchair or whatever the situation is. A human being is a human being. So
Absolutely.
remember that. And yes, smile, be kind, and whatever. But the other thing is maybe also take their lead. So um, just see where they're at, or ask them what they need and see what they go along with where they're at. Now, what I mean by that is it could be, when you meet someone and they've been diagnosed, had a certain diagnosis, right? If they're fighting that and they're all about surviving, then you support that. If they understand that that's not where they're at and they're in a different place, then you're supportive of that. It's like wherever they're at, just support where they're at. But also just remember that person's a human being, and I
Yeah,
think you've got a human being in front of you, and don't know. Sometimes if you're afraid, you don't know what to say that. Say, hey, look, I'm just feel like an idiot. I don't know what to say.
yeah, and
Maybe
I've been
that's
in situations
conversation
like that.
starter.
I've been in
Yeah.
support groups where that I've said just that, and they'll say, the question will come up, wherever it is, and
Mm.
and sometimes I'll just say I don't know where I'm at. I've
Yeah.
literally just walked out of the
Yeah.
office and I've just been told that, hey, there's a new growth here and we're going to operate next week, and I haven't had
Yeah.
time to process. So at
Yeah.
the minute, I've got surgery next week, and we'll just leave it at that. Whatever
Yes.
eventuates.
Yes.
But yeah, look. I guess adding to what I was saying just now is that when I deal with people, even people, if I'm just at the hospital in the foyer, like it doesn't matter, have to
Mm.
be my clients or people that I'm involved with. I think
Mm.
me asking them if they're okay, is there anything that I can do? Whether it's, you need me to just to hold your bloody cup of coffee while you sort your bag out, you know.
Yeah.
And what I find, and this is going to sound really ironic, is that the people that are least able to help someone are usually the first ones at a scene or first ones to help.
Yeah.
I tipped out of my
Yeah.
wheelchair. I was thinking the other day off air that I tipped out of my wheelchair, completely came out of the chair in the
Mm.
hospital foyer, out of all places.
Mm.
And I had two people walk over me. The person that came to come and render assistance would have been in his late 80s and barely could touch. She was shuffling to me to come
Yeah.
and see how he was going to help me to get up.
Yeah.
And my only explanation, and it's happened multiple times in different
Yeah.
incidents, that it's always been someone who's either elderly or been in a position or has someone in a position that can relate, that comes to help,
Yeah.
not someone who's able
Yeah.
and, like
The
fit and
people
strong.
with insight are the ones who've lived
Yeah.
it or seen it, or they have an insight around it. Exactly. Yeah. Look, I'm just highly aware that I don't know if we're going to run out of space or something's going to happen and this isn't going to suddenly stop. Is there anything that you would like to say just to end this? Any advice or just anything at all that you'd like to say to end this
Look, I
story?
think I think I think I think your listeners have probably gone through a box of Panadols by now. But look, I think all jokes aside, I think that no matter where you are in your life now, whether you're able or disabled, is irrelevant. I think that times, I'm a real black and white person. I'm real. Like I'm a kind of you can't be a little bit pregnant kind of guy. Either you are or you're not. You know.
Mm,
And if you're not okay, then there's no shame and there's no stigma of, there's a lot of helplines out there now. If it's just to talk to someone or even if it's a friend or whatever it is,
yeah,
be brave enough to take that step because there are
yeah,
people that it will help now. It's not 20 years ago where, they think, oh, no, you're billing on an asylum. It's not the way anymore.
yes,
The realities are people are closing shops and businesses after 80 years and running at 60 years running businesses
mm,
because they just simply just can't keep afloat.
yeah,
And again, that has a chain reaction. So, the world is not the way it once was, and then I think it's only going to get worse. I don't foresee it getting any better anytime soon.
yeah,
So, I guess the advice that I have, if you're struggling, then don't be scared to reach out for help.
yeah,
Like I'm open, to help people through certain aspects of their life. I'm more sort of medically based
yeah,
guidance, but you know. I'm open to help people where I can and best can. And if I
yeah,
can't, then I'll just refer,
yeah,
but at least you've got that first point of contact
yeah.
and be honest to yourself to say that, yeah, look, I'm in a position, I'm struggling here, I need help.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important. If you need help, ask for it. And look, the other thing I've gotten from your story really is just when one thing ends, it's an opportunity for something else to begin. So it's also understanding that the end of something isn't always, you know, there's hope, there's other things in front of you. And the big one too, what I would just like to say to you as well is like thank you for all your advocacy. I think that you and you even we didn't even get to touch on it, but I think you talked to me about making some new screws for surgery for spinal
Yeah,
screws, or but
yeah,
you're involved in so much
yeah.
advocacy.
Like I said to you before, I'm involved quite heavily in the medical industry now,
Yeah, yeah,
and I've sat down with a large company and we've developed spinal instrumentation, pedicle screws
yeah,
for spines and fixations and things like that
yeah.
because I know the ones that I had in me weren't working, so something had
Yes.
to change.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing. I don't know. I don't know if I believe in God or what, but I just sometimes you feel I feel like you can see that someone's just there's a spirit working through someone somehow. I don't know what it is, but anyway, they just feel it feels to me like you've had experiences, certain experiences for a reason. Whatever it is, you're just getting on with it, and you're actually just doing the advocacy, and you've got this purpose, and you're highly motivated to make all these changes and make a difference. And I would dare to say that you already have made a huge difference in the world. And the more you do, the better it is. But you've already have made such a difference, and I just
It's very
want
kind
to
of you to say
remind
that.
you of that because sometimes we get so caught up in the next thing, and just like, well, you have already made a huge difference on this planet. So
Thank you.
thank
Thank you
you
very
for
much.
everything you've done.
Thanks, Fiona, for saying that. I look, I don't see it that way. I think
Mm,
I'm just a very, very tiny cog in a very, very big machine. That I'm somewhere down the bottom that can help. Like
mm.
like I said, I can't help everybody, but if I can make a change in one
Well,
person's life,
tiny
then
cog can completely change how a system works, though, can't it?
no, you got to work within the confinements of what
Yeah,
you've given, basically.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, I was just like, what I was trying to say is that I think a tiny cog can change a lot, right? Because if you just think about a tiny thing in a system can bring it to a halt, can't it?
Oh, absolutely.
So a
$10
tiny thing.
part can cripple an
So,
aircraft. Yeah,
so you're this little agitator in the system.
yeah.
And I don't underestimate that. I think these things they might seem because you're at the coalface, and because you're at the coalface and you're in it, and there's so many as you know, from a broad stroke, I think that you're making a bigger difference than you may know. And
Thank
I
you.
want you to understand that, because I'm seeing it from a broader perspective, because you're in it and you're so far in it and it's so hard and it's so many difficult people you're dealing with. But I think it's much broader than this. And not only that, but even if we are making little tiny differences for little people on a daily basis, that's that's life. That's what life's about. And that to me is making a difference
Well,
too.
it's the
Just
one. It's
those
the one
daily
percenters.
things.
Well, the 1%ers, isn't it? If we
Yeah.
can do one thing 1% better than everybody else, then eventually those
Yeah.
1% add up.
Yeah, and if you're that one person on that day that cares, you're the one person on that day that listens, you're the one person on that day that smiles at another human being, that is actually huge on its own without all the extra stuff that you're doing. But look, I just think, congratulations on all of your advocacy. I just really
Thank you.
admire it. And thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it, and it is really inspirational. And thank you for coming on today.
No worries. Thank you for having me on. I
Yeah.
really appreciate the invitation.
And for anyone out there who's watching or listening, please like, subscribe, and share. And please share this story. I think it's a really, really important one to share. And thank you so much, Hazem.
Thank you. Thanks, Fiona. Thanks so much for having me on.
See you all next week. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.